Ezell Gerard Smith, Ezell Gerod Smith.
All right, now tell me, where are you from and where do you live at now?
I'm from Lynch, Kentucky, in Harlan County, and now I live in Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County. Well, I remember Lynch being so huge, so big. I grew up in the 50s. I was born in 1953, and I spent 22 years in Lynch until I moved to Harlan County, Harlan City, the city capital. And Lynch had so many people. It had its own movie theater, own car dealership, gas station, hospital, bank, post office, but everything was run by the local coal company, Coke Coal Company, which they named it U.S. Steel, and it boasted one of the biggest temples in the world during my junior high school and elementary years. And we've seen our dads, come in, from working in the mine and just be wore out and everything. And they would always tell us, don't go in the mine, because it kills you. And if you're gonna go in the mine, I'd rather kill you myself. So, but unfortunately, I did go in the mine for about 9 years and something and got injured. But luckily I got out before I could understand what the slow death that they were referring to, black lung and arthritis and all, from being in the dampness, coldness, and breathing in the coal dust. I worked all 3 shifts. The mine ran 24 hours a day, from 7 in the morning till 11 at night. It ran what's called production, and 11 at night to 7 in the morning, maintenance would be ran on all the equipment, the belts, and set up to further the distance in the mine, because when you're cutting it out, you move, and then they have to have the belt and everything moved with it. I did everything there was in the mine except for be a boss. What they call a miner, which is like a auger that cuts the coal, shuttle car, which is like well, let's just say it's like a car, but it's not shaped like that. It's a heavy metal, probably about 13 tons, metal, rubber tires, to get the coal from the face of the mine to the belt dumping area to come outside. Then they had another car, which is called a shuttle car, which cleaned up, the place to make it look neat and where you could work. And then I did engineering helper. When I got hurt, I went into that. I was trying to become an engineer, land surveyor, underground surveyor. So I did some underground surveying of the mines, because you survey the outside and you know how far to cut before you drop off a cliff or before you go into someone else's property or till you go to another county, and so. Yeah, well, you can't just go in and start cutting in the mine, because normally there are 3 layers of coal mining. Now the bottom layer you can, but when you get to the middle and the top, the way the shape of the mountain is, you got to know when you're getting close to the outside, and you want to be at least 800 yards away from the outside, because it would start sliding, caving in on the outside, and you would end up with problems like that. High school in Lynch was very, very thorough. the teachers that U.S. Steel brought in were some of the best at that time that they could get for a rural area. And they took patience with us to give us the best education, but they didn't want us going to the coal mines. So they tried to show us an avenue out, go to college, play sports, you know, get out of the mountains. There's a whole different world out there besides this little 5 miles that y'all live in. They just would take time out. They would come to your homes and, you know, they would meet you, you know, on the street and ask, you know, about your homework and your summer work. And even the coaches, you know, would do the same thing. It was a village. When you heard how to say a village, this was more, this was family. These were people who would call you up, you know, and say, hey, did you do your homework? You know, and then call your mom, your dad up and ask, or if you're trying to fall behind, okay, is it sports? Is it, you know, some little girl got your mind twisted? You know, they took a personal interest in us to get us out of there. And me personally, normally it would only be the blacks taking interest, but I'm light. They used to call me red, yellow, and the white people took an interest also to help me further my education and to know that, you know, there's a different route. Okay, when I moved to Harlan, the drive to work became a 47-mile drive every day, morning, night. I wouldn't stay with my family. I would always come back to Harlan because I had gotten married. Then one day I was what they call pinning top, drilling the top of the mine where you cut the coal out, and then there's slate rock or stone rock. It's just rock. It's nothing you can use in the coal family. So we would have to pin boards or plates or put up timbers so you could advance. And one day just caved in and messed up my back, you know, shoulder, leg, and I was in the hospital for, I can't remember if it was a month, and rehab for about 6 months. And when I went back, I had claustrophobic. But when I did land surveying and underground, it didn't bother me as much as to hear the grinding and the machinery, you know, because then you couldn't hear the top if it popped or cracked. In the mines, when you cut the coal out and there's nothing there but like just a smooth top, let's say sand rock, you can hear it ripping like paper, or you can hear gas sometimes spewing, and then you can hear and see pieces of rock jagged just shooting down because of the weight, because you haven't put anything there to kind of brace it. The sides would shoot out when the pressure got too heavy, what they call rib rolls, and if you're close, you could get hurt, eyes could get put out, you know. But you get to like it, you get to understand the sounds, you know, and you get to say, hey, thank God for another day. And there was a lot of days that men come out saying that, and myself, because like I said, it was a lot of rock falls, a lot of cave-ins, a lot of rib rolls, you know, where the sides would just explode due to the weight before, you know, you could get timbers. And timbers are logs that might be 7 foot, and the coal sometimes is only 48 inches, so you got to saw it and brace it, and you may have to put a 4x4 brace where the rock is trying to fall, and sometimes you miss that and it falls after you've been there for several days, and that's what happened with me. You know, it had fell as we advanced, but it wasn't braced up enough, and it pinned me into a piece of machinery. Louisville, I got there in 1982. Great city, growing, small like Lynch, Harlan. You know, you knew a lot of people in your area, you know, and you got to know them by name. But nowadays, it's like all other cities. It's infested a little bit with not the right things, people taking shortcuts, wanting to take from people early and not wanting to work. But when I left Harlan, I was the first black city police officer. And then, like I said, for Ivory Engineering, I was the first black that worked there. And for Eastern Machine Shop in Harlan County, I was the first black that worked there. So I tried other avenues. And when I was on the police department, we went to Academy, and guys in Louisville said, hey, there are no blacks in Harlan County, Eastern Kentucky. Come to Louisville because our pay scales are so much different. So I did. And I became a correction officer because it took so long trying to get on the police department there. So I retired from the state, you know, with a pension in law enforcement. And I went and did supervisor Metropolitan Sewer District and a manager for the Courier Journal newspaper after I retired, but just something to do because that Lynch is in me, you know. You work when you can, and you just, you know, just don't give up on it. The first incident at being a police officer was when I got through my little training and put my uniform on and got to drive the police car, and I went to see my so-called friends, and they ran. So you found out who your friends were, because they must have been doing something illegal. But you know, it just you know, just had me alienated. You know, don't play ball with me. Don't, you know, hang out. Don't come around with my children or playing with your children. You know, so they just, it took them a while to, you know, realize I'm just the same guy. You know, I'm reading the rules, and if you break the rules, you know, it's a confrontation between you and I. And by me being only 5'6", a lot of people, white and black, you know, say, hey, we're gonna whoop you. But luckily, my record's 102-0. Yeah, so I did have a female who tied me because I didn't believe in fighting women. But it was all great, you know. I didn't really realize I was the first until I moved to Louisville, and I got a call and saying, you know, telling me, you know, these people did not have a black before you, but Lynch, well, Harlan County treated me as if I was white because I could go in places like Everett, Verde, Black Mountain, which was very rural, and they wouldn't bother me. They threw bricks a few times at me, you know, but it was night, so they couldn't see me. But during the day, you know, you hitchhike, you walk, they would give me rides, you know, and other black people, you know, they wouldn't. So I've always had, I think, an angel on both shoulders, not on one, but just walking with me, because I have gone through some darkness in the mountains and in Louisville. You know, I should have been dead when I was about 5 or 6. I've always been a workaholic, so all of Harlan County, I had something to do in it, job related. When I was in the mine, and I worked 11 to 7. I would umpire baseball, high school, and we had a 2-year college, So I did basketball, officiating a little bit, but I did baseball all the way into Bell County, and I would be the first black on, umpire there, and it would be so rough because they would think you couldn't read and write, so they throw these rules at you. And, a lot of times I said, okay, let me pull out the rule book. And I'm saying, no, let me go by this, but they would just try you, the coaches would. And being in Everett, Black Mountain, Putney, Home, Wallace Creek, Smith, which is some of the uglier places, Smith, Wallace Creek, and places like that, I did the Courier Journal, managing and delivering papers up through there. In Eastern Machine, I took steel products that someone may want fabricated. We did that, and they just, would just kind of look down at you, and I wore them down. About a month later, they'd be like, hey, we're gonna meet at the Big Top, which is one of the local restaurants, or Dairy Queen, well, not Dairy Queen, but Dairy Freeze, you wanna stop by and eat with us, and it was just, like I said, something about me just appealed to people, but they would always try me first, and I would always just be there standing toe to toe. But now a lot of people had fights and stuff, but I didn't have a lot of them, just in the law enforcement field, security, personal bodyguard, so you gonna run into that. But up in Lynch, Harlan, I had a few, but my mother, who I really say she's from Verda, but my grandmother is from Kimber. So they grew up there and they moved. My grandmother got married and moved to Cumberland, and then they moved to Lynch. But my mother moved to Ohio. So I spent Lynch with my grandparents. My father, he lived in Lynch. His family was from Alabama. They was in the war, and he came back home to Alabama after doing his tours and his duty. And it was a guy that came down and was telling, people, hey, you can make money, you can come up in Kentucky. Here, let's go. And he came up, and that was it for, my mom and him. But she went to Ohio and he stayed in Kentucky. Cincinnati. And when I got in junior high school, I went up, and city life wasn't for me. We thought Eastern Kentucky was poor, and I had never seen a poor person. But when I seen someone eating out the garbage in the city and walking around with no shoes, now we walk around with no shoes because we saving our shoes, but just, it was winter time one time, and I said, Mom, can I please go back? So she let me go back, But I would come each summer, and I would get jobs, even before I was old enough to get jobs. I was working on like pop truck with a guy, helping him out. And he said, you're doing more than a man, And in Lynch, my grandfather told me, one day I was in high school, he said, you're making more than a grown man. So you got to pay your grandmother, to do your laundry, So that gave me a pay ethic, but it was just so much, to learn, and each family would teach you something, because I worked for, let's say, about 30 families, in Lynch, but each one of them gave you something, One might have been a carpenter, one might have been a gardener, but you got a lot from each family. You know, at a young age, like I said, I worked, let's say when I got out of school, ninth grade, I may have had 5 homes to get in their coal, cut their kiln, which is firewood, paint, dust, mop, clean gutters, cut their grass, work in their gardens, and the kids be saying like, hey man, we're finna go play ball. I say, hey, I'm finna do a job first, and I would meet them at the ball field before they got there because they're dragging around, but I'd go make some money first. Well, my thing is, Eastern Kentucky Social Club, if you come here as a family, who came from Eastern Kentucky, I don't care where you live. You can live in Egypt, and I visit Egypt, and I say, I'm from Lynch. You're gonna say, come in my house. Come, let me feed you. That's the way we are. Now, if you're from Lynch and you don't come to Eastern Kentucky Social Club and you meet someone, oh, hey, hi, how you doing? Can I take you out? But if you come to these meetings and these groups and this family, you can sleep. You don't worry about them taking nothing out your home. You don't worry about, hey, I'll give you, you can have, because we know and I feel that our hearts are one. I mean, you can call. I got friends now. I call them up, say, man, hey, I need to go to Cleveland, and I'm here in Louisville, and you live in Tennessee. Man, hey, I'll be there tomorrow if I'm off. Like, hey, it's just that so close.
Family.
Yes.
Big family.
And you very seldom find a selfish person from. Now, they're there, but let's say if you lined up 10, 20, you might get one that's selfish or vindictive, but everybody else is gonna hug you, love you, give you, do for you, and say, hey, if you need me, call me. If you need me, just hold your hand up or something. And that's the way, the teachers raised us, our parents, their parents. Hey, if you did something wrong, their parents gonna whoop you, and by the time you get home, you hear that phone ringing, and your mom's at the door, your dad, and you're gonna get another one. And hey, they didn't question him, what's he doing wrong? They knew that when that family did something to you, chastised you, you was in the wrong. What wasn't no going home explaining. But they felt that you were related to someone, because people just don't come to Lynch, nowadays. Now, in the old days, they came looking for work.
Yeah.
But when you come nowadays, it's offspring of someone, and they're kind of like trying to figure their way out and trying to find a family or something like that. But yet, we feel you're already family. When you come across that line, that little ditch, you're family now.